welcome to the Go Long Pod, and we are recording live on Substack Live. I'm Tyler Dunne with Matthew Coller, and those who listened at the site, Apple, Spotify, and you hear a little snazzy guitar riff there. Right there is the man strumming those strings himself, which I don't know. We talk football so much. I feel like we should give you the floor to explain, your guitar background. I mean, it sounds like not just professionally done. Like I want to hear a whole album of Matthew Coller jamming out on the guitar with that intro.
I know someday. I did a couple of years ago. I did some stuff with a producer who's a Vikings fan because I created my own intro and he was like, "Hey, you ever want to record some songs?" So there's like a YouTube burner out there that has a 4-song EP of just guitar work. Really, I mean, there's no big story to the background of playing guitar. It's really just if you recall, once upon a time in this world, playing instruments mattered when they didn't create every song using AI. And so I grew up in kind of the grunge era, post metal. So it was like, Metallica was still big and Ozzy Osbourne, RIP, was still big. But, bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains made it very easy to learn their songs. Like if you wanted to learn how to play Metallica, you were going to have to put a lot of work into it, but you could pick up a guitar and in a few weeks play a few Nirvana songs. So it made it very easy for me to learn when I was that age. It must have been probably 1997, 98. And then I just started to feel like I was getting good at it and kept playing and playing and playing and playing and playing. And then I was in a couple bands in college, but then got into our business, Tyler, which doesn't allow a whole lot of extra room for things in your life with hobbies. So I've just continued to play and play and play. And then when YouTube came out, oh my gosh, like that was a huge moment for me because there's so many great players on there, so many lessons, and learning how to do recording and stuff like that in my own house. That was big. So it's been really cool. It's a fun thing that kind of helps me step away for a minute sometimes from the laptop when I'm spending all day, doing my Vikings coverage and everything else. So it's fun. And I love when you ask for a new intro because that means I get to play around with a little bit of a jam.
I mean, I've got such a respect for anybody that can play any instrument, but especially guitar. I mean, once upon a time, this would have been 11, 12 years ago now when I lived in Green Bay, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel covering the Packers. And, this is pre-wife, pre-kids, pre-dog. I think I told people then if I couldn't keep a goldfish alive at that point, right? So Justin Felder, good buddy. He worked at the Fox station in Green Bay. He's now in Atlanta. We've had him on the pod. He took guitar lessons from Forrest right there in Green Bay. He said, "Man, if you're looking for something to do, take it up." I went, bought a guitar, uh, took the lessons, practiced here and there, was not very good. I think I could play Live Forever by Oasis because it's very easy with those chords, and like bits and pieces of other songs. It's hard. You got to use like a totally different part of your brain. Like it's one of those things. Like Ella, we were just driving down here this morning, and she's talking about wanting to play an instrument one day. I'm like, good. You got to do it young. I feel like if you don't get into music young, it's hard to pick up later in life. But I'm probably just making excuses for myself, right? That's what I'm doing.
I mean, yes and no. Like, there's, I think, higher degrees of difficulty for certain people based on even your DNA. My dad is a musician, so like it's already in the DNA that I could probably pick it up faster than some other people if you don't have kind of that musical gene. But what it really comes down to is just like anything else. If somebody says, "I'm not a good writer," I'll never be Tyler Dunne. I'm not a good writer. You're like, well, how often do you write? Never. So, it's the same thing with that. It's like if you really want to put in the hours, you can become a good guitar player. You might not become, Metallica's guitar player, but you could definitely, anybody can pick it up, put in the work, and then learn how to stand in front of other people and play and, get a rhythm down at least and play songs and stuff like that. But the dedication to it, that's where luckily during college when I didn't have a lot going on and in high school, I was putting in a ton of hours early when I learned how to play. It was probably junior high when I first started. And, I was just, like a normal junior high kid with not a whole lot going on. So I was putting in tons and tons of hours from the very beginning. So now I might play for a half an hour a day, which isn't a whole heck of a lot. But if I'm doing a half an hour a day after I've laid that foundation of many, many hours to start, then a lot of that just sort of hangs in. Like when Ozzy Osbourne died, I went back and learned all the Ozzy songs that I had learned in high school. And what I was thinking was, this was way harder in high school, where this took me months to learn these songs. But now, 30 years later, I'm able to do it. So it is really fun. But the biggest part for me now is just that, being a beat reporter takes up so much of my life. And, you and I, as independent journalists, we're always trying to expand our businesses and find new ways to approach all the stuff. And it can be a little bit on the stressful side sometimes. So to have some other hobby, some other thing to kind of keep me occupied and, like you said, use a different part of the brain, is really helpful. So I love doing it, man.
Well, I mean, obviously, you should have just taken a bite out of a bat, done some hard drugs, and just see what happens from there. When you were listening to some Ozzy, who knows where your career could have gone. I think you left an opportunity on the table. If you want to leave this podcast, eat some bats, do whatever Ozzy was doing. R.I.P. I did the same thing. Whenever one of these musicians dies, I love just going through the catalog, listening to some old stuff. So many jams, so many jams. But that's not why people are listening. Let's get to it. It's in the headline. J.J. McCarthy. We didn't see him last year. He had the knee injury. I remember, I think we were at those joint practices in Cleveland when the news hit, and Kevin O'Connell, it looked like, somebody kicked his puppy, and justifiably so, man. He was bumming out. It seemed like J.J. McCarthy was really turning that corner. I mean, that's what you were kind of conveying to me on the sideline there in Berea. This is somebody from OTAs to training camp, worked his ass off, which is a part of the job that it's not cliche. It's real. There are young quarterbacks who will work, and then there's young quarterbacks who will not. He worked. So he rehabs. He's back. They say thanks, but no thanks to Aaron Rodgers. We talked about that a while back. They let Sam Darnold sign with the Seattle Seahawks. They are full steam ahead with J.J. McCarthy. Now that you've seen him, training camp is complete in Egan. What's your assessment, Matthew Coller? I mean, because around him, this is a team that wants to win a Super Bowl now. They spent the money on defense to win now. They paid Justin Jefferson. Aaron Jones is a stud. They get Jordan Mason to pair with him. They rebuild the offensive line. It all comes down to J.J. McCarthy. So what say you, Matthew Coller, a Purple Insider?
No, you're absolutely right. And one of the biggest takeaways from training camp is, holy moly, this defensive line, this group that they've put together, and they were able to trade Harrison Phillips, who they're from his time in Buffalo. And a major reason is that they just have so much depth there that they're able to do that, make a trade like that to get some additional draft capital and cap space, because they've had even other players that the most of the public doesn't know, like Jalen Redmond or Levi Drake Rodriguez, step up, and they signed Javon Hargrave. They signed Jonathan Allen to go along with Grenard, Van Ginkel. Blake Cashman is part of that front seven. I mean, it is a deep, deep football team. And then on the offensive side, revamp the offensive line, which was such a problem for them in those Week 18 and playoff games where it all fell apart with Sam Darnold. And not only that, but you're giving him the coach of the year from last year, a defensive mastermind, and Brian Flores on the other side. There is so much to work with here. But the one thing that made it a little bit more challenging to evaluate J.J. McCarthy during this camp is that Justin Jefferson got banged up on the third day of training camp, or maybe the fourth day of camp, where he had a hamstring injury. And they, said, oh, it's mild and it's not going to be too bad, and he's going to, work his way back. But we just wrapped up training camp yesterday and he hasn't practiced. And so he's just coming back, not in full anyway. So he's just coming back, and I expect him to be there week one. I've had many fantasy people. Is he going to be there week one? Like, yeah, I expect him to be there. He was ramping up on the other field, so he's got a couple weeks still. But, the reason that Sam Darnold last year looked so unbelievably good in training camp, and we were shocked when that happened, was that he was throwing to number 18 over and over and over and over again, which has been a really great model. So to not have that, I think you have to judge it a little bit on a curve. you also have to judge it on a curve because of the defense he's going against. This is a top 5 defense from last year that got significantly more talented this year in the offseason, not just on the D line, but also, some low key players that maybe are not talked about as much. But Isaiah Rodgers was a guy who won the Super Bowl with the Eagles at cornerback last year, and they went and got him. I think he's an upgrade from some of the guys that they had last year. So he's facing an elite defense without his top wide receiver. And then he's had other receivers get hurt, like Jalen Naylor got banged up, who's been their number 3 receiver. So now he was out there yesterday with Jordan Addison, who's going to be suspended the first 3 games. And then 2 undrafted free agents from the last couple of years who have been on the practice squad. Like that's their receiver group, along with, TJ Hawkinson. And I think all things considered, JJ McCarthy had a very good training camp. I did my grades on the podcast yesterday for every position at training camp, as one does, and I gave him a B plus. There's still some times where you realize how young he is with some of the accuracy where you go, oh, okay, he just threw that ball into the stands. But, there's nothing, but I mean, it's just to be expected with someone who missed so much time. The last real football game that this guy played in was December 2023. I mean, that is crazy to think about. Or maybe it was January 2024. But I mean, that is crazy to think about how long it's actually been since this guy has played a real football game. So you expect some of the technical elements, some of the sharpness with throwing to be rusty at the beginning of camp, but it got better and better and better and better. And then in the last joint practice, where, these joint practices, they get ramped up. I mean, those are guys going hard, and there was 4 or 5 scuffles, and, both coaches are trying to win those. And he had a run where he completed 12 passes in a row and just looked really on point, excellent, in command. He gets rid of the football. He makes plays with his legs. He's in total control. And, I was saying something as a comparison that I want people to take the right way is that what I saw in this training camp was him sort of playing like Alex Smith. And for some reason, that's an insult until you actually look up Alex Smith's career. And you're like, oh, actually, Alex Smith, who was kind of criticized for not being aggressive enough or whatever, but I thought that he utilized what was there in front of him. It was not Sam Darnold, where you were just wowed by Sam Darnold's arm, like day in and day out. Oh my gosh. It was much more of a like death by 1,000 cuts type of performance during camp. It was getting rid of the football, in command of the offense. And when he needed to use his athleticism, he was able to escape and run for first downs. There's some ability to throw off platform. Maybe I think that he was painted so much like a game manager that people don't give him enough credit for things like that, for the playmaking ability that's in there. And I think it's a major part of his mindset is to be a playmaker. And he's had to figure out when to do that throughout training camp. And that's been a major coaching point for Kevin O'Connell. But before they went to camp, I picked them to win 11 games. And my whole barometer for JJ McCarthy is when I get to the end of camp, will I still pick them to win 11 games? And the answer is yes for me. I think it's been a very solid, sound camp for him. And there's going to be questions going forward. And if he has a bad first game, you're going to hear they made a mistake. They should have got Rodgers. They should have, stuck with Darnold or whatever. But I think that in that building right now, they feel like, okay, we made the right move. We've got the stacked team. And if he can play like Alex Smith, if he can not turn the ball over, if he can hit the throws that Kevin O'Connell sets up for him, if he can trust Justin Jefferson, if he can make plays with his legs, they're going to win games for sure.
I would think too, like they're not, even though this is a team that is loaded with talent and last season looked like a Super Bowl contender for most of the season, they're probably thinking of this, if you were to kind of hook them up to a lie detector test, 2 to 3 year plan, really. Like, there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be some rough moments, some rough games, but you just laid it out perfectly, Matt. Like if he can just function, point guard the offense, handle intellectually everything that Kevin O'Connell is sending to him, and you don't want to just not be a disaster. You want to make plays when you have these weapons, but there's definitely a foundation they're probably looking to set here, and then maybe all right, you get that experience. Like that's kind of the calculation back in March, where yeah, I guess you can talk yourself into an Aaron Rodgers or any veteran, I guess for that matter, taking advantage of this window right now, but that would have stunted that development. Then you're kind of pushing that down the road even more. I gotta laugh though. Like when you're talking about, I mean, you probably have fantasy people like friends reaching out to you nonstop looking for fantasy advice, let alone the fantasy stations. Me and Connor Orr have talked about this, and he actually did this once. Back when he covered the Giants at the Star Ledger. I have a request for you, Matt. You gotta go on one of these fantasy shows, like a really popular one, and just completely make something up. I know it's gonna damage your reputation, but just tell the masses that like CJ Ham is gonna get 30 carries a game. You know what I mean? Just screw with everybody, just to see like a little social experiment here. I mean, probably not the best for you, but I think I'd get a laugh out of it.
Okay, I can tell you about the wrongest I've ever been when trying to help out those fantasy people project during training camp. If you remember, go back to 2020, where there was a truncated training camp. It was only maybe 2 weeks or something. These teams had to ramp up. And at the very beginning of that training camp, Justin Jefferson got COVID. So he missed the first, I think, maybe week or so. And I don't know how many practices it was. Maybe it was only like 12 total practices that they were able to get, and he missed two or three of them. So he started from way behind with the offense. And they had this other receiver who was a seventh rounder, BC Johnson, who had been in the offense the year before. And so BC knew the offense much better. And when they got to week one, they just didn't feel like Jefferson was fully ready to go. And so so I was talking with, some of the fantasy people, and I'm like, yeah, I think it might just be like a slow ramp up for Justin. And he really came on in the second half of the camp after he was like not, recovered from COVID and all that sort of stuff and was getting back to himself. But yeah, I just don't think he really knows the offense yet. And, we might see BC Johnson catch more passes than him. And at the time, that was not a silly thing to say because of what we get so little information in that camp, right? Like a normal camp, it goes on forever. And by the end, you feel like, okay, I'm pretty settled with how they're going to use everybody and whatever else. But that one, so I think Mike Clay of ESPN, I'm like, I don't know. I think, they really love this BC Johnson guy. And I think they're just, it might be a development year for JJ or for Justin Jefferson and all that. And the first two games, I was right about that. And they went 0-2, and their offense was horrible. And then in the third game, they played the Tennessee Titans, and he went for 175 yards, had one of the sickest touchdowns you'll ever see, and never looked back, and had a historic rookie season. And BC Johnson, I think, ended up with like 17 catches. So I am not your fantasy projection expert, but I will say this though: when we talk about this team and playing around JJ McCarthy, it's such an interesting topic of how does Kevin O'Connell change who he is as a play caller? Because when you look at last year, I mean, no quarterback had more yards on passes that traveled 20 yards down the field than Sam Darnold. So he's throwing deep. He's playing Jameis Winston without all the huge mistakes last year, just pushing it downfield. And that's just not who JJ McCarthy is going to be. I think he can throw downfield, but I don't think that he's just going to go back and try to rocket launch all the time. That's much more of a Sam Darnold thing. That's why Darnold's always been so volatile in his career, even at USC. And they go out and get Jordan Mason, who's been phenomenal, looks like an absolute beast. I mean, there's been a few times where I've thought, am I insane for thinking this guy looks like Marshawn Lynch right now? But then you look at last year, he averaged 5 yards a carry. So it's not the craziest thing. He and Aaron Jones look like such a great duo. And they drafted a first round left guard, Donovan Jackson, who's been very good in the run game. They spent $17 million on a violent right guard, Will Fries. They went and got Ryan Kelly, who is just a phenomenal leader for this team, but also, a major upgrade from what they had. They might be a team that plays a little bit more like San Francisco, where they're running the football a lot and playing everything off of it. And I've just noticed that they are running play action all over the place. I think that KOC is going to kind of show this year that he's not just like a one-dimensional type of pass first, always be aggressive, throw it down the field. I think he can play a little bit of Kyle Shanahan ball where you have 12 play type of drives and where you're, grinding it out at times. And I think that is what is going to be necessary, especially early with JJ McCarthy. And really the way the schedule times out, you can play that way, I think, in the early part of the schedule for them going against Chicago and then Atlanta, and then they face Cincinnati, and that might have to be kind of the first shootout. But it'll be really interesting to see how the way that plays out. But from a fantasy perspective, Mason is the one I keep going back to because I really think they are going to lean in to a different style of play than what they had last year.
That's very interesting. And, you mentioned it earlier. We might have even done a podcast in prep of that 2024 draft, dissecting these quarterbacks. JJ McCarthy was like the one dude that it was hard to get really excited about because I don't know, we kind of grew up watching college football. I can't get out of my head like these really winning quarterbacks like the Chris Winkies and the Ken Dorseys. And for whatever reason, like I just automatically hurled JJ McCarthy into that bucket because Jim Harbaugh didn't throw. Like he just didn't throw the ball a ton. When he was asked to do it, he did really well. And I guess you can like really study the film and see those plays where he's throwing off platform and being athletic. But it was one of those prospects. So it was a little harder to kind of come around to because you didn't see that wow factor, and that's what we're all trying to figure out. Like, what is that one special quality that a quarterback has that can help him rise above, be a difference maker? So, like you mentioned, all of these other variables, and it's very real. Those aren't excuses. Those are real. I mean, if you don't have Justin Jefferson, if you're playing this defense, and this is the first time you're doing it, I get it. But can you figure out what that one quality might be? Because if you are a team like the Vikings and you are thinking Super Bowl, whether it's this year or next, you need something special out of your quarterback. To you, what could that potentially be inside JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And the two issues that I had with him as a prospect, and I say issues meaning I was totally behind them drafting him. Like when they made that call, like this is exactly what they need to be doing. This is the right direction. This is a good quarterback for Kevin O'Connell and all that. But it was hard to find those plays like when you watch Jaden Daniels against was it Florida where I don't know, ran for 300 and threw for 300 or something historic. It was really hard to find that eye-popping, I cannot believe that guy just did that. And when they had joint practices the other day, this is kind of funny too. They had joint practices. Drake May's out there, and that is a large man who can do some crazy things with his arm. I mean, he made some plays on the move, off balance, off platform, where he just flicks it and you go, what in the world was that? Like, that's special in terms of the guy's size and arm and everything else. I have not seen special things from JJ McCarthy, but what I've seen is consistent things from McCarthy, which is the ball goes to the right place. And he really is very good at intermediate passing, meaning 15 to 20 yards. I mean, the number of times where I said, man, he ripped a 20-yard pass into a tight window. He sees the middle of the field extremely well. I think he sees the field in general extremely well. And he's got a great pocket presence to him. And so you're saying, well, look, if I made him on Madden, would I give him a 99 arm? No. Would I give him a 99 accuracy? No. Would I give him 99 speed? No. Like none of those things. But you look around the league and there's a lot of quarterbacks who win a lot of games by making great decisions. And I don't mean to make him sound like so Alex Smithy that there's no upside there, but because he is a playmaker and he can throw on the move extremely well. I think that JJ McCarthy, there's kind of two kind of quarterbacks that aren't the total freaks like Allen and Lamar Jackson. There's your quarterbacks who make a lot of wow plays and a lot of mistakes. I think of Baker Mayfield as being that way, is going to lead the league in touchdowns and interceptions, at times. And he's going to throw for 300 one week and then 100 the next week. And then there's kind of the beating drum type of quarterback that week in and week out, he's making great decisions. He's functioning the offense and he's leading long drives and he's making the right decisions. And I think that those quarterbacks can be just as successful. And again, like the comparisons are not perfect because he's a 5-star recruit who came from IMG Academy and went to Michigan and won the national championship. This is it's not like Brock Purdy. But yet at the same time, I want to say play like Brock Purdy. And I see that, where Brock Purdy has this really good understanding of where all of his receivers are. And he knows defenses extremely well. And he functions in that offense and went to a Super Bowl with the San Francisco 49ers. And sometimes I when I see quarterback rankings or whatever, and Brock Purdy's like, 20th, like that, you're really missing a little bit of the forest through the trees here. Like the job is to move the
Yeah.
offense. And the other part of it too is I think Jaden Daniels is the next, Lamar, and he is the next Josh Allen. But the NFC is overall pretty wide open. And it's been really the battle of the roster builds in recent years. Who just builds strongest roster? And I think Jalen Hurts is an amazing quarterback. But I also think he's not Josh Allen, and they're able to win the Super Bowl. And Purdy is not Josh Allen, and they're able to be in the Super Bowl in overtime against Patrick Mahomes because of how good your defense is, how good your line is, how good your weapons are. If the quarterback does his job and then is occasionally brilliant with certain things. And I think that that's what McCarthy has to be. And then we'll figure out the upside. One thing we have to remember with McCarthy when we talk about the upside is, okay, I know who he's not. I know he's not Lamar Jackson, but with the upside in general, I mean, he's starting for the first time and he's 22 years old. Like there's room to grow. There's room to continue to develop. And I think that he does have physical skills to lead a team, and make plays and have pressure. This is the thing that drove me the most crazy about watching Kirk Cousins, where, have pressure come free up the middle and scramble away and make a throw on the run and things like that. And there's kind of a baller mindset from him. So, it's figuring out what I'm pretty certain about from watching him enough over these last 2 summers is that he can do this. But the hardest part with the quarterbacks is to figure out what the ceiling is going to be, because you have quarterbacks like, a Justin Herbert or a Tua who have had success, but can they really get over the top? And then there, that sort of thing. So it's the most fascinating position in football. It's been super interesting to watch him and watch Kevin O'Connell coach him. But I think if you're asking me his superpower, it's probably his mind and his pocket presence. And then he has the physical tools to do all the things that are necessary to put that into action. Because we see, your Kelly Holcombs of the world who are great with a lot of different areas, but just don't have the accuracy and arm, and they still find ways. And everyone goes, why is this undrafted guy still in the league? And it's like, probably because he can run the offense, but he doesn't have the physical tools. And then we see guys with physical tools who flame out of the league and never become anything. So, yeah, I mean, I think that that's really what it is. I think he sees the field well. I think he gets rid of the football. He understands the offense and then has enough raw physical talent to make plays at a pretty high level.
And as long as like the physical and athletic stuff reaches a certain like level, if it's in an upper percentile, whatever you want to say that is, I think if you're a fan of a team, you would rather hear everything that Matthew Coller just laid out than holy shit, look at this 2-minute YouTube highlight. You know what I mean? Like, give me a quarterback who is going to grind and work and knows where he's looking. Like, I want all of that stuff. Like, the more I think we cover football, you kind of realize, man, that that is rare. That's not you don't take that for granted. It's not corny cliche. Not everybody is working like that. So that was some really good insight there. So two quick things. So I mentioned this a few times at Go Long. So those who subscribe, read, also make sure you subscribe and read the Matt stuff at Purple Insider. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, all that. He is a man of many medium, all over the place. Mentioned this a few times. So it's obviously been a little quieter on the story front at Go Long for good reason. Chipping away at a series that will make a little news. It will be published as we get a little closer to the season. But along the course of that reporting, I was talking to an NFC scout about some of these young quarterbacks. Here's one of you mentioned Drake May and really being impressed by him. Here's what this NFC scout said about Drake May. He said, quote, Drake May is exactly what you look for. Drake May is the prototype, great kid. I met him at the combine and the kid's just walking around glowing. People want to be around him. You gravitate toward him. Then you get to the talent. Then you get to the physical tools and the way that he moves with his athletic ability. He can run, the size, everything is there. So I don't know, like, let's keep an eye on him out there in New England. And then another scout brought up JJ McCarthy and said, look, we weren't really sure. I'm sorry, this wasn't a scout. This was a GM actually. And he's like, I wasn't really sure what to expect in JJ McCarthy because I hear some weird things. We saw the meditation stuff that he does pregame. Wouldn't really elaborate on what those weird things were that he was hearing. But then he said he sat down with JJ McCarthy and was like blown away. He has a presence about him that you want at that position. Have you gotten a sense for his personality? Like what kind of leader is JJ McCarthy? Have you kind of gauged that weirdness? Any idea what kind of leader, what kind of teammate, what kind of person the Vikings have in their locker room?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the weird element of JJ McCarthy, he is a guy that, well, I'll put it this way. He told us on draft day, the day after he was drafted, when they did his press conference, somebody asked him the question, like, hey, did you ever picture yourself getting drafted? And, some guys are like, no, never saw it coming or whatever. JJ McCarthy said, yeah, in fifth grade, I decided to edit my life with the sole goal of becoming an NFL starting quarterback. In fifth grade. And ever since fifth grade, he has put every ounce of effort into being the best possible quarterback that he could be. And and he's not like exaggerating, because his first D1 college offer, you got to guess at what age he was when his first D1 college offer happened?
16?
13.
Woo!
That's right. Yeah. Which of course is not that serious, but that just shows you that, him winning a state championship in the state of Illinois, and then they shut down football for that 1 year and he goes to Florida at IMG. And so I think what he's always working on is every single possible edge that he can find. And he did tell us a story when it comes to the meditation. He's also a very open guy when it comes to this stuff. I think a lot of athletes, I think they've gotten better at sharing things with mental health and stuff like that. But in the past, I think most athletes, most quarterbacks would just be like, no, I'm tough. I'm not gonna whatever. But he said that, during COVID, when he was at IMG and he's isolated down there in a different state, away from his parents and away from everybody he knows, that he really had some mental struggles. And I think, I don't know anybody who was totally fine through that time, but that was when he found some ways for him to deal with that, which in one of those is meditation. And meditation, he was joking the other day that people think you have to climb a mountain in Tibet to meditate or something. Like a lot of it, because I did a story on this and I interviewed a sports psychologist who actually does some work with NFL teams. And he told me a lot of it is just that, your nervous system can get overheated. And even just taking time to center yourself, like close your eyes, breathe, focus on breathing, that sort of thing can have such a positive effect. I mean, I would suggest it for anybody. Like just
Totally.
if you're somebody that gets overwhelmed, take 10 minutes in a quiet space and just close your eyes and breathe, and you're probably going to feel a lot better. So I know it's more complex than that for him, but I think he's always trying to find every edge. And what he understands is that the mental part of playing quarterback is unbelievably strenuous. It's unbelievably difficult. And I think you got to have a couple different type personalities to make it. Kirk Cousins was similar in the way that he'd work with sports psychologists and he would always try to find anything he could to just keep him in the game. And he maximized his talent. Some other guys, I think, of kind of Ben Roethlisberger for this. It's just so intrinsic to who they are that you can never knock them off their spot no matter what. Like that guy is so cocky and so just sort of arrogant in the right ways and believes in himself to the end of the earth. And so he's just going to be like, whatever, I don't care if I threw 5 picks, I'm going back out there. But I think McCarthy realized that he's not quite that guy. So he needs to build in some mental things for himself. And I think that what people meeting with him probably want to understand is like, why do you do that? Like, why do you meditate underneath the goalposts, which I don't think he'll be doing in the NFL, but why do you do stuff like that? And but if you ask him, he'll give you an explanation for any of those things. Like it's always thought out. There's always a point to it. There's always a reason to it. And I think that shows up with where he can communicate extremely well to his coaching staff of what he needs and what he's seeing, and is he processing certain things or struggling with other things that he's not afraid to say, that's not going to work for me, or that's not working for me, or can you help me with something? Like that's, I think, a really good trait for his personality. But there's been with McCarthy, it's an odd thing to me because there's been a lot of that, what you said resonated even with the reporting during Aaron Rodgers. It was like well, the Vikings, they might not believe in him behind the scenes, or they're worried about this, that, or the other thing. As if that, and he talked about it yesterday, as if that recovery is just like the easiest thing in the world to have a meniscus at 21 years old and be out after you were a first round draft pick and all those sorts of things. Of course he struggled through that. I mean, of course the team wanted to see how he came out of that, both physically and mentally and from a football perspective. And people treated the team doing their due diligence and wanting to see him get out there for OTAs and wanting to see him, they treated that as if it was some sort of indictment on JJ McCarthy as a quarterback and a prospect. And I thought that characterization was unfair, because I don't know what team wouldn't want to consider their options when the quarterback has been through so much. But his personality, I think, has lent people to this kind of like, is he weird? Is there something wrong with him or whatever else? And then you see him lead as QB1 and you talk to him and you're like, this guy looks like someone who you'd make your franchise quarterback. That doesn't mean I'm guaranteeing they win the Super Bowl, but he checks every box for me, from the mental and the physical perspective. And that's why they did this, because if they didn't believe that, if Kevin O'Connell didn't believe that, Aaron Rodgers would be here right now and I'd be probably less happy covering him, or I'd be a lot more stressed, put it that way.
Man, we almost made it through this whole podcast without going the Aaron Rodgers route. That's on you. I'm not taking the blame.
No, that's on the Vikings for talking
Yeah,
to Aaron Rodgers.
yeah,
Otherwise, I would not have brought him up.
not on Matthew Coller. You know, I love it. JJ McCarthy, like that's such great life advice. I mean, think everybody listening or watching, think about your own crazy lives where we're all running in a million different directions, and we're thankful that you're watching this Substack live on your phone. We're all on our screens, on our social media apps. Like, I don't know, like laying in bed at night when I can finally just take that deep breath and, the kids are asleep and you can relax. That's kind of when I get a lot of my ideas for stories and want to rewrite things. And, then you're reaching over to the phone to put something into the notes app so you don't forget it. There is a value to just closing your eyes, shutting everything off, being alone with your thoughts. And we probably should all take this wisdom from JJ McCarthy and in our own lives. And that it's going to help him as a quarterback because there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. Like there is all quarterbacks, but you've lived that life in football with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota and seeing what it's like. I mean, I guess not every fan base is as lively as the Vikings, right? There are some fan bases where you're a young quarterback, the media presence isn't that big. The fan pressure isn't that intense. And if you struggled, yeah, they'll probably talk about you on daytime TV, whatever. But it's not what it is in Minnesota. So there'll be pressure on them. So I imagine that's a good way to kind of get through the day.
Well, and the circumstance, and I sort of warned Vikings fans before this happened. I said, you better be ready to be on Colin Cowherd's show every morning. You better be ready to be on Get Up and have Stephen A. Smith yelling about JJ McCarthy, because it is a relevant franchise and it is a very unique circumstance. I can't think of another team who ever won 14 games and moved on from their quarterback. And what all those big TV shows and everything else, what they know is that quarterbacks move the needle, quarterbacks create debates. And with JJ McCarthy, if he wants to find out what pressure is, lose those first two games. And, those are both national TV games. So that
Monday,
means, yep,
Chicago.
that means Tuesday morning. That means the following Monday morning. It's him versus Penix, US Bank Stadium in week 2. I mean, there's like he's facing 2 of the 2024 draft class. Like there is a lot of stories of pressure. And, the thing is, you mentioned earlier about how they've created a window for themselves. And I agree with that. I think it's a 2 to 3 year window. I lean a little bit more 2 because I don't think you can see 3 years ahead in the NFL. But because, I mean, think of all the crazy stuff that happens throughout a
Right.
single season. There's no way you could figure out who's going to be on a team 3 years from now. But I think that's true, that they have the bones of a Super Bowl caliber roster for the next 2 years pretty locked in. But that also creates so much pressure on him to go out and go 3-0 to start the season and be what they're exactly supposed to be. Because as much as the other players can say, oh yeah, man, we got his back and we love JJ and everything else. And I think he is one of the most personable people that I've ever seen at that position, where whether it's the 30-something-year-old defensive tackle or whether it's the rookie wide receiver, he's always connecting with everybody. I think he gets along with everybody really well. He's a people person. There's not too many quarterbacks I've ever seen who come up before a press conference and say hi to all the reporters, know him by name already, and all that sort of stuff. And I don't think that's an act. You see him do that throughout the game. You saw him interacting with kids and fans and all sorts. He just has a big personality that's very likable, very genuine. But if you go 0-2, those veteran players who are talking about the Super Bowl when they came back or when they signed their contracts or when they got to camp, they're going to be looking around being like, can this kid do it? And that's the level of pressure that happens. And what I've really sensed from this team, especially from someone like Jonathan Grenard, would love a go long feature someday on Jonathan Grenard because he is a fascinating dude. He After they lost to the Rams, he tweeted out, "More is required." And when everybody showed up, when they got back for off-season workouts, there were shirts at every locker that said "More is required." And he has had one of the best camps I have ever seen from an edge rusher. And he was one of the elite edge rushers in the league last year. But he has come back with this attitude of like, we are going places this year and I'm going to take us there. And that's the attitude of a lot of these guys. I mean, Hargrave is 32, Allen is 30 or 31. I mean, these guys have fought and fought and fought to have a team that's this good. Justin Jefferson has no playoff wins, I think, in his career. So, I mean, you're talking about guys who I think it was Brian O'Neill who said, I don't care if we run 75 times or pass 75 times. I just need to win. I need to get to the playoffs. I need to win. Like, you feel a desperation from these guys. And that's another reason why, all that Aaron stuff was out there, is because when you look around, you're like, all these guys are winners. Like, all these guys in their careers have had great stats,
Could
great
have said that from
numbers.
Edward Boyd. Ah,
Yeah,
what a missed opportunity.
right,
You
exactly.
want winners.
Right. Yes, exactly. So, you have all these players who are just so desperate to win, so ready to win in their careers. They know there's only so many years that you get. You maybe I'm letting a cat out of the bag that you talk to Aaron Jones for a piece that's going to come up for you, but you know how desperate Aaron Jones is to win a Super Bowl. Like this team has these guys who want it really bad. And what it reminds me of, if it all goes right, it reminds me of the 2017 Eagles that had a ton of veteran players around a younger quarterback. And eventually they won with Nick Foles, but Carson Wentz was the one who really got there. Wentz wasn't perfect, but he had a great team and he had a bunch of veterans and they were able to get that, get to a 13 wins and home in the playoffs. We saw it from Jared Goff in 2018 too. He was, I think, a third-year quarterback. They brought in Sammy Watkins and Andrew Whitworth and Robert Woods and all those guys that were ready to win, and with Aaron Donald and everything. So it's a fascinating situation that he's in. But I talked to Kurt Warner the other day for a story, and I asked Kurt like what, because Kurt won a Super Bowl in his first time ever starting, and I said, just what's your advice for McCarthy? And what he said was, you don't have to do it all yourself. Like, remember that you have all these guys around you who have done it for so long, and let them guide you. And I think that that's good advice. I don't remember where the question even started with this, but it's just,
He's great.
I just can't talk about this circumstance enough because how many times have we ever seen this? I mean, really, like Alex Smith to Mahomes, maybe, but there's just very few situations where teams have been this good when a quarterback starts for the first time.
Shame on me for messing up my reference there to Mike Singletary, of course, is who we're looking for there.
Can't win with them. Yeah, that's right.
Want winners. Epic. We need more press conferences like that. I miss those. Everything's too insipid, watered down. Ugh. We need real. That was great though. I can't wait to see what JJ McCarthy can do in this situation. You're right. There really isn't a comp. I mean, Mahomes and Alex Smith, I guess they didn't win 14 games the year before. And, Mahomes played that last game as well, right? I think against Denver, and you can kind of see it to an extent. Really haven't seen JJ McCarthy. It is a golden opportunity. Love the roster. You're also in a division with Jordan Love, who may or may not be the MVP this season. We're dying on that hill, baby. We're not getting off that Jordan Love hill. Detroit Lions, all they have is the best roster in the conference, maybe the entire sport. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but I wouldn't put anything past Kevin O'Connell and really that roster, the Quizzy Dopo-Mensa. He got extended, right? So they're locked in now. A really good thing cooking there. A long ways from the Mike Zimmer era. People are happy to go to work. Who would have thought?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a way, way different culture now. I mean, that's why that NFLPA survey is so valuable to us because I know what I'm seeing with my eyes, but I love more evidence that proves it, how the players feel about this team. Let me throw you this question. How give me a comp of how good McCarthy would have to be, like what quarterback, but it can't be an active quarterback. Give me
Mm.
some quarterback from the past, because I have an answer for this. How good he would have to be that's realistic. You know, you can't say, oh, he's just got to be Dan Marino or something. Like that's not realistic. Like, give me a realistic who he would have to be from the past in order for the Vikings to be in the NFC Championship. You want me to give you my answer?
I mean, anytime I talk to you, I just always try to weave this reference in. It probably isn't perfect, but give me your guy Jeff George. Jeff George. And was it 99, right?
Yes.
Except Randall Cunningham. I mean, they don't really make sense at all in the same sentence, but I just wanted to bring up Jeff George and that gorgeous, gorgeous ball that he could throw even late in his career.
1999 is one of the most fun seasons in Vikings history. It's the one that I rewatched the most on YouTube because Jeff George was so much fun. But because I think this is a realistic comp, if JJ McCarthy becomes the absolute best version of himself with this team, is Matt Ryan. And you remember when Matt Ryan got to Atlanta, they were a really good team and they were pretty
Yeah.
stacked. And I think they won maybe 11 or 12 games that first year with him because they had all the bones of the Vic team that had eventually, kind of fallen apart, but they still had all those good players. And I also think like when you think of his size, and Matt Ryan never had an arm that just blew your mind, and he never he had, but what did he have? Like he had a lot of really great playmaking ability early in his career, not late in his career, but early in his career, and he was a great leader of the offense. And he had Julio Jones, which you have here, and Justin Jefferson, and they made it work and they won a lot of football games. So I think that there's kind of a comparison there for the best case scenario for JJ McCarthy.
I love that comparison. You're right. There it is. 2008 Atlanta went 11 and
Mhm.
5. They lost to Arizona that year in the playoffs, second in their division. Matt Ryan's his numbers weren't like blowing you away. I mean, they handed the ball to Michael Turner almost 400 times that year. He was a bull. Oh man, one of those forgotten dudes at running back. But Ryan threw for 3,440 yards, 16 touchdowns, 11 picks. But he kind of became Matty Ice, 4 game-winning drives that year as a rookie. You kind of see the ice in the veins uh, as a rookie. And he only got better, linked up with Kyle Shanahan, and had that MVP season. If only, 28-3 didn't happen, we'd probably be looking at Matt Ryan. That was one of the best seasons ever at the position at the time. I remember I was at Bleacher Report then covering that Super Bowl in Houston and kind of had to report all week, have two long stories ready to go for either outcome. And having it all ready to go. Like this is the cherry on top for one of the best seasons we've ever seen at the position. There goes was a Robert Alford had the pick six, Tom Brady lunging, missing, and then all hell broke loose. So yeah, you don't know what's gonna happen. That football's shaped a funny way for a reason. Matthew Coller, this was awesome. Thanks so much for carving out a little bit of time post Vikings training camp, pre 2025 regular season. I think we all learned a little something about JJ McCarthy. Everybody do yourself a favor. If you're in the Substack app right now watching this video, subscribe to Matt's Substack, subscribe to his YouTube channel, Apple, Spotify, wherever, however you listen, you watch. He has you covered on everything Minnesota Vikings. And I will get out there in person at some point this season, I'm sure.
Soon.
And we'll do one of these in the flesh. All
That
right.
sounds
Thanks so
good,
much,
man.
everyone.
I appreciate you.